is currently on its way to Donald Trump's desk. His team says he's going to sign that tomorrow. And let me just say that one more time. A bill that will compel the Justice Department to release the Epstein files is on its way to Donald Trump's desk. I have been in this town a very long time. I've seen lots of bills pass, lots of bills stall, lots of bills fail. I just cannot possibly overstate how remarkable that is. Donald Trump tried to desperately stop this night from happening. He did everything he possibly could. Mike Johnson did everything he possibly could to stop this night from happening. Mike Johnson sent Congress home for a month over the summer to stop this from happening. Remember that? Mike Johnson refused to swear in a duly elected member of Congress for over a month to stop this from happening. Donald Trump's henchmen tried to strong-arm a Republican member of Congress in the Situation Room as if supporting the release of the Epstein files is a national security issue in order to stop this from happening. None of it was enough. None of it worked. They tried everything they could to stop it, and they failed. And now that bill is on its way to Donald Trump's desk. And just as remarkable as the story of today is the story of how we arrived at today. Because we would not be here without the activism of so many fearless survivors who have shared their incredibly traumatic personal stories and pushed Congress to finally take action. In the end, the pressure from Donald Trump and Mike Johnson and all of their Republican allies, that was no match for the power of the stories of these survivors. And tonight you're going to hear my conversation with one of those survivors, a woman who not only suffered the horrific abuses of Epstein himself, but also the abuses of other powerful men in his orbit. And that's a big part of this story, too. It's not just about one man. It's not just about Jeffrey Epstein. It's about a whole web of people who preyed on these women. She's never told that story publicly before today, but she joined me here earlier tonight to do just that. And we're going to bring you that interview in just a second. But first, let's just remember for just a moment. Just a week ago, there were only 4 Republicans in the House supporting the release of the Epstein files, and there was a constant concern that they would be peeled off at any given moment. 4 Republicans who stuck their neck out and resisted a tremendous pressure campaign by Donald Trump and his administration. And now the Epstein Files Transparency Act, used to be known as the discharge petition, that's what it's called now, the bill, has passed both the House and the Senate with only a single lawmaker voting no. Now, just because for the record, because I'm sure you're wondering, who is that person? How bizarre. The person who voted no was Republican Congressman Clay Higgins, who I bet is going to have a lot of explaining to do in the coming days and a lot of questions we'll have to answer to Capitol Hill reporters. That aside, the bill itself is both extraordinary in its potential impact, but pretty straightforward in its actual text. It requires Attorney General Pam Bondi to, quote, release all documents and records in possession of the Department of Justice relating to Jeffrey Epstein no later than 30 days after it's enacted. So that bill, again, on its way to Donald Trump's desk, where he can either sign or veto it, which feels if he did the latter like it wouldn't exactly sit well, given it passed with a veto-proof majority in both the House and the Senate. In other words, Congress kind of, well, they did force his hand here. And by this weekend, even Trump himself seemed to know where this was headed, at least in the House. Because when it became clear he could not stop the momentum behind the bill, he decided to try to save face, I guess. Here's what he said just yesterday.
So I'm for any, I don't, they can do whatever they want. We'll give them everything. Sure I would.
Sure I would? Really? I mean, really? You're suddenly okay with the bill you've been opposing for months? I'm very skeptical of this. And I don't think I'm the only one. I mean, here's one of the survivors at the press conference on Capitol Hill today.
And to the President of the United States of America, who is not here today, I want to send a clear message to you. While I do understand that your position has changed on the Epstein files, and I'm grateful that you have pledged to sign this bill, I can't help to be skeptical of what the agenda is. I want to relay this message to you. I am traumatized. I am not stupid. I am traumatized. I am not stupid.
That really stuck with me. I mean, there is good reason to question whether the president has had an actual sudden change of heart. I mean, Trump doesn't actually need Congress to compel him to release these files. He could have done that himself at any given moment over the many, many months. And he didn't. It's not to mention it was just last week that we got a trove of more than 20,000 emails from the Epstein estate, and Trump's name appeared more than any other figure in those emails, with Epstein himself alleging that Trump, quote, knew about the girls. Hard to imagine that after all of that, Trump suddenly wants even more Epstein documents to become public. And then there's the investigation that Trump ordered into several prominent Democrats over their alleged ties to Epstein, which could just be a ploy to block the release of those files. And that's because, according to the text of the bill that just passed by Congress, the Attorney General can withhold any files that would jeopardize an active federal investigation or ongoing prosecution, provided that such withholding is narrowly tailored and temporary. So could Trump try to use that provision along with his new investigation to block the release of any files he doesn't want out there? Well, I mean, Republican Congressman Thomas Massie, one of the few Republicans who has pushed for the release of these files from the very start, is already calling him out on that.
If they have ongoing investigations in certain areas, those documents can't be released. So this might be a big smokescreen, these investigations, to open a bunch of them as a last-ditch effort to prevent the release of the Epstein files.
So even as this bill heads to Donald Trump's desk, which is a very significant moment, some members of Congress are still working on other ways to get new information. I mean, just today, the House Oversight Committee subpoenaed Epstein's financial records from the banks J.P. Morgan Chase and Deutsche Bank. Later on this hour, I'm going to talk to Robert Garcia, who's, of course, the ranking member on the House Oversight Committee, about what ways he is preparing for the possibility that Trump may try to stonewall. And I'm not trying to be dark here or Debbie Downer, just important to be clear-eyed about all the things he might try to do. And I'm going to also talk to him about what he can do about it and what Congress is still working to uncover. A big part of this always has been. And Congressman Garcia deserves a lot of credit for this bill passing today. So does Congressman Ro Khanna and Congressman Thomas Massie. And yeah, I mean, so does Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and a lot of other members. But the people who deserve the most credit, far more than any elected official, are the survivors, who have been relentless and courageous, many of them for years, in their efforts to get these files released. And today those survivors made clear that they will keep fighting until everyone involved in Jeffrey Epstein's despicable crimes is brought to justice.
For too long, survivors have watched others speak for us. And while we are grateful for our allies in Congress on both sides, we've realized something. This fight belongs to us. We lived it, and we know the truth.
That's why we stand here today, to demand justice and accountability, not just for Epstein and his crimes, but for every predator and every enabler who participates in or protects abusers.
Without transparency, there's no accountability. Without accountability, there is no justice. And without justice, democracy dies.
Our voices are real. Our pain is real. And our demand for justice will not be silenced.
While their fight continues, those survivors have done something few thought possible. This was the moment earlier tonight at a candlelight vigil when many of those same survivors learned that the bill had passed the Senate unanimously.
The Senate has passed the bill under unanimous consent.
What an incredible moment for those survivors, people who've been, many of them fighting publicly for years or just fighting all of this privately for years. It's hard to imagine, too, that this was a moment Donald Trump ever wanted to see happen. But those survivors made it happen. They took on the most powerful person in the world, and they won. And tonight, their stories are more important than ever. In just 90 seconds, you're going to hear my conversation with Charlene Richard, who's telling her story for the very first time. And their neighbors. And I know that's part of why you want to share your story, too. I know this is incredibly difficult. So you can share what you want of your story. It's yours to share. Let me start by just asking you how you got involved in Epstein's world to begin with.
So I was modeling and traveling as a model, and I met him through a friend. He was heavily involved in the modeling system. I think I want to call it a system because even though we have an agent and that agent gets us jobs, it's considered a job, but it's also it can be worked as a different kind of system for predators. And it's important that people are aware of that. And that's another reason why I'm speaking out is because I really want all the young girls and boys, this is anybody, and not even if you're underage, if you're older as well, to understand what a predator is, what the signs are, and it's just very important.
One of the things that has been so striking about the PSA campaign and also the press conference today was the holding of photos of a lot of the people who spoke of when they were approached by predators, I should say. I stumbled over there because I wanted to say it in the right way. Well, you were young.
Mm-hmm.
You were in your teens?
Yes, I was in my early teens. Yep.
And you were modeling out there. And what, in your experience of what you were asked to do, I know that Epstein himself, of course, was a predator, or someone who worked for him would tell you to go there?
No. It was just a place where something was held, a party was held, and people would go to different events.
This is about so much more than one person, Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell or Donald Trump. But because Donald Trump is a person who, of course, owns Mar-a-Lago, I just have to ask if you think he was aware of that arrangement.
I don't know if he was aware. Actually, I can't answer that. I'm sorry.
And you were in your teens. You were in your teens.
Yeah.
And I think this is important for people to understand that people were in their teens and were young, and you were a young model, mm-hmm. and you were handled by a predator. Let me ask you something else, because again, it's much bigger than a couple of people. Were you trafficked to other people?
Can I?
You can say yes, but you don't have to name names.
You only share what
Sorry.
you want to share. You don't have to be sorry for anything. And I'm asking you this because I think it's important to understand, as people do understand about Virginia's story, that it's not about just one person or two people. It's much bigger than that. You can share whatever you want to share.
Terrible things had happened to me within my time with dealing with Jeffrey Epstein. I had encounters with people that I would rather not have.
I understand, and we've talked about this before, why you don't want to share names. And I think people like Sky and Amanda have educated all of us on the fear a lot of survivors have about litigation, about threats, about what can happen to your family. And Virginia, unfortunately, experienced a lot of that. I don't want to, can you share more about why that's a fear that survivors have about sharing names or specifics? Because it is a question a lot of people have out there.
Yeah. It shouldn't fall on the survivor's shoulders. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of people that just want them to release the names. They're like, well, you have the names, just do it. The problem with that is that these rich and powerful men they can sue you into homelessness, would be a big part of it, but B, it puts serious threat on your life and your family's life. There were times where my sister was sitting across people and they would push a picture of her own children in front of her and essentially say, I know where your kids go to school. I mean, I alone had own threats on me from Jeffrey Epstein.
People threatening her who had
a lot of money and a lot of power. And I think her memoir does a very good job of giving information without even having to say the names. If you do just a little bit of digging, you can figure out who these people are. But point being is there were still names up until the very end that she couldn't name because these people could, I mean, they still can come after these survivors, not just with litigation, but the fear of their life for their family and their friends and the people around them. They experience real threats.
And you have kids, and you have kids. I know you're not going to share the names, and I think I wanted to make sure people understood why. Are these people, when the list is released, that people would know? Are they people who are famous in some capacity?
Yes.
And are there names out there that have not been out there yet?
Yes.
That you were trafficked to?
There's names of people that are out there that are not on the list.
Okay, deep breath, everybody. That was just the first part of my interview earlier with Charlene Richard, who is going public for the first time as a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse, along with Sky and Amanda Roberts, brother and sister-in-law of Virginia Giuffre. I'm going to share with you more of that conversation and where it went next after a very quick break.
Rough, dry eye? MyBo is the only prescription dry eye drop that forms a protective layer for the #1 cause. Remove contact lenses before using MyBo. Wait at least 30 minutes before putting them back in. Eye redness and blurred vision may occur. Ask about MyBo.
As Americans, there's one thing we can all agree on: the promise of our Constitution and the hope that liberty and justice is for all people. But here's the truth. Attacks on our constitutional rights, yours and mine, are greater than they've ever been. The right for all to vote, reproductive rights, the rights of immigrant families, the right to equal justice for Black, brown, and LGBTQ+ folks. The time to act to protect our rights is now. That's why I'm hoping you'll join me today in supporting the American Civil Liberties Union. It's easy to make a difference. Just call or go online now and become an ACLU Guardian of Liberty. All it takes is just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. Your monthly support will make you part of the movement to protect the rights of all people, including the fundamental right to vote.
States are passing laws that would suppress the right to vote. We are going backwards.
But the ACLU can't do this important work without the support of people like you. You can help ensure liberty and justice for all and make
Files is headed to Donald Trump's desk, and I would not have predicted that at the beginning of today. There is an understandable sense of cautious optimism from many of Epstein's survivors and their loved ones. For people like Sky and Amanda Roberts, and for newly public survivor Charlene Richard, there's definitely a moment of hope, but also of real resolve for what comes next. Here's more of our conversation. Amanda, you have been standing right by Sky's side, talking about Virginia, your beloved sister. Does today feel like it's a moment after fighting for so long of some element of progress?
I think this journey is long, and you get so little wins. And I say this every time because it's what gives you momentum for the next step. This is a marathon that we're running, and we're running it together, and that's what has been so powerful. But it gives us so much hope. It was a huge moment for the very first time. That vote, yes, was an acknowledgement for survivors that this did happen, that they are truth tellers, that we see them, that we believe them, and that we're gonna continue to fight with them, and we're gonna run this marathon together is what I felt happened today. And I'm hopeful because I believe the American people are believing and seeing and trusting in a way that they were never trusting survivors before. And they're truly seeing them and seeing their stories. And it's making an impact.
There's no question it's making an impact. I've been in this town a long time. Very few things make impacts. Human stories and humanity makes impacts. And we wouldn't be here without you two and without you sharing your story. Let me ask you, because you spoke so powerfully this morning about the long length of time you have been waiting, and quietly waiting, and without the same universe of people that I think you've been building over the last couple of days. What has today meant to you so far?
Today means that we're actually being seen. It means that maybe transparency is possible. Maybe justice will be served. Maybe all of the people that have been through this, not just Epstein survivors, but this is for everybody. This is for America. This is not just for us. It's called the Epstein Transparency Files Act because we started it. These guys helped start it. But this is for everybody.
You two have came to this as loving siblings of your sister, and now you've become incredibly powerful advocates. And today's a hopeful day, but I think being clear-eyed is so important in this moment, too. There was an investigation that the Trump administration announced last week. Do you have fear that they might use an ongoing investigation as an excuse not to release these files, even if legislation is passed? I don't bring that up to be a Debbie Downer, but just for people out there to understand all of the battles ahead for all of you that have been advocating so hard.
Yeah. I think that was an issue that we talked about today when we sat with various members of the House, the Democratic Women's Caucus. We sat down with them, and that was a fear that we expressed to them, that potentially this could be another, stone wall that could be thrown out at them. And I think what we asked of them is that don't give up. You need to join this fight with us when they do try to throw something against us.
It's like, are you still talking about Epstein? Are you still talking about Epstein? And then it's like, oh, well, now we're reopening. There's a reopened investigation. What a joke, man.
Over again. And I think we all were determined in that room. And I mean, so many representatives, Republican alike and Democratic, vowed to be a champion.
Republicans too.
Yes, vowed to be champions for us, vowed to find the routes and the way through for survivors, because it is time and it's beyond time. And we are looking to Congress to be that vote for us, to be the voice, to continue to push and to carry the weight,
What do you think Virginia would be thinking right now about today?
She did it. She did it. She paved the way. She had a nag for pointing at people's faces and telling them you were wrong. You were wrong, and I was telling the truth the entire time. It's truly vindication for her. I mean, today's a monumental day. It's acknowledgement for the survivors. It's acknowledgement to my sister that she was a truth teller this whole time. And without her, we wouldn't have this road. We wouldn't have this road that we can now go down and really have these conversations. It's just tragic that she's not with us to share it, but she is. We wear her here. A lot of survivors wear her butterfly because it's a piece of her. It's a piece of her with us at all times so that we can continue to carry her voice.
Charlene Richard, Sky and Amanda Roberts, thank you all for joining me today. I know it's been a long day and a powerful day for all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, this bill to release the Epstein files now heads to Donald Trump's desk for a signature. And let's just say, I have a lot of questions about what comes next. You may too. Like, how and when could the documents actually be released? What kind of...
The deal is it just skips the House because the Senate voted 400. The Senate voted so overwhelmingly that they just move it straight to the House. It skips the House and goes straight to the president. The president will have to sign it, and everyone's assuming they're erasing the files of Trump raping kids. You know what I mean? So, communist app, TikTok trying to censor me as much as possible. Yeah, TikTok censored me. It's weird that TikTok censors even small streamers. I saw a lot of like right wingers on TikTok, and they let them say whatever they want. There was people saying all kinds of bullshit on fucking TikTok, man. I mean, they were said what I said was so tame. All I said was Howard Lutnick said that Epstein filmed everything, so they most likely have videos of Trump, right? And then TikTok banned me, dude. I just said they probably have videos of Trump raping kids. based on the Howard Lutnick interview, and they banned me on TikTok. I'm like, what the fuck, dude? That was tame. And I even showed resources. I'm like, here's the Howard Lutnick interview here. Let's show the interview. Well, based on Howard Lutnick saying, they filmed everything. I think they might probably have video evidence of Trump, who was there many a times. Ban. Like, what the fuck, dude? That's so tame, dude. What I said was so tame. But yet they ban me. It's outrageous, man. So I am concerned that Trump's just going to try to you know, scrub everybody's name except scrub his name and go after everyone else. But that's going to be hard for him to do because his name is in there so frequently and everyone's going to see it, man. If it's like, you know, 5-letter word redacted everywhere, what's that 5-letter word that's redacted everywhere? That this size word, you know? Gee, I went to blank tower in New York, and we went to blank golf course, and then we went to blank's house in Florida, and then we went to blank's golf course, and then, you know what I mean? Blank-a-lago, and then when blank was running for president, blank, there's a rape video with the blank is blurred out. Hey, we all know who blank is, dude.
If Trump truly does sign the bill when it reaches his desk, which a senior White House official tells MS Now will happen tomorrow morning, Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi would then have 30 days from then to release searchable, downloadable copies of all unclassified materials related to Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and any individuals, including government officials, named in connection to Epstein's illicit activities. But as with any legislation, the devil is always in the details. So here are some of the things that I want to know. How much information are we actually talking about here 30 days from tomorrow if Trump signs it tomorrow? And what are the different ways? I've talked about some of them, but you got to plan for this kind of stuff that Trump could try to wiggle out, or his administration could try to wiggle out of actually releasing all that info. And do Democrats have a plan for how to make him comply if they can, if he does try any of the funny business? Luckily, I have just the person to ask. Joining me now is Congressman Robert Garcia, one of the co-sponsors of the bill really and the top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee. Congressman, can you hear us okay? I hear you're having a little sound issue. You hear me okay? Okay, great. Yes. I know this has been a huge historic day. I've talked about this throughout the show. I've been in this town a long time. Things like this do not happen with only one dissenting vote in Congress as it did today. And a big part of that is the push you and many others made. And as I started the show talking about the role of survivors, most importantly. So I have some kind of nitty-gritty questions here because I think people are wondering what's next. The bill, as it's written, gives Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi 30 days, as you well know, from when Trump signs it to release the information. So if he signs the bill tomorrow, as his team is saying he's going to do, logistically, how do you expect that will happen? Like, is it going to all get dumped on the DOJ website at some point, or how will the information go out?
Well, I think that we can look to the original subpoena that we put in place as can be a model for what he might do. The reality first, as we all know, is that Donald Trump right now could release all the files. He could have released all the files yesterday, weeks ago, months ago, but he has tried and directed a massive cover-up. What we expect will happen is that Donald Trump will likely, through Pam Bondi, release some of the files. But we know that there is an immense amount of documents, photos, and videos. And he might choose to be very selective in what he actually sends to committee. And what he might send to the committee might already be in the public record. The only disclosure that DOJ has already done was about 30,000 pages of already released public documents. And he might do that again, or he might try to stall the whole thing through this new sham investigation that he's now launching, of course.
This is so important, and I want to ask you about this. And I've been trying not to be a Debbie Downer, but we all have to be clear-eyed in this moment. But it sounds like what you're saying is that these documents, you expect them to come to the committee first before they're posted online. Is that what you expect in 30 days from tomorrow?
I mean, I think what we expect in this next 30 days that we're going to probably get something, but we think what we're probably going to get is not actually going to move the case forward. He's still going to have control over what goes out, what we actually get. And most importantly, everything that he has done in his actions has shown us that he actually is not interested in justice for the survivors or for the victims. He has proven to us that he's more interested in covering for powerful men and people that have harmed and abused survivors and girls than he is actually about any kind of justice for the survivors. And the other point that's really important is we need Republicans to stop covering for Donald Trump. I'm glad that some of them showed some courage today. That needs to continue.
I think this is a very important point. And I just asked, I talked with some incredible survivors, you know them, Sky and Amanda Roberts, today about this, and Charlene Richard, who's never been out talking publicly about this. And one of the things Amanda Roberts said was that when they met with people on the Hill today, many members, including Republicans, said they would stand by with them in this fight. Do you have confidence in that, or do you think people who voted for this today could back off?
I think there are some Republicans that are taking principled positions, which has been honestly heartening to see in this investigation. A vast majority still will do whatever Donald Trump wants them to do. And remember, even before Donald Trump had this flip-flop, we were hoping that we might get 12, 20, 30 members to join us. A few days ago, it looked like that number could increase. And it was only until Donald Trump gave them the okay that a majority of this caucus, including the Speaker, had any sort of interest in telling that story for the survivors, in supporting their horrific tragedy that they've had to endure, and actually trying to get them some justice. And so I don't have any confidence that we're going to have real partners. I'm hoping that we can put enough pressure and that the American public is prepared to continue to advocate for the survivors, that Donald Trump will have to act. Because next up is the financial records, the bank records, the financial fraud. We need to get information from the CEOs of these banks where Jeffrey Epstein did business. There is a lot of this investigation to go, and the American public should know that we are just getting started.
We were going to talk about that. We have to take a quick break. That's how this works, as you know, but we're going to talk about that because you also issued subpoenas to these financial institutions today. Lots of news. We'll talk about it after a quick break.
Follow the money trail. Like, so how much of the $1.3 billion that we know Donald Trump, we know Jeffrey Epstein got about $1.3 billion for his sex trafficking. How much of that money came from Donald Trump? 800,000, 800 million, 0, 10 million, 5 million, 800 million? I just think it's weird that Republicans for years wondered who's in the pedophile cabal, and they're calling Democrats saying you have cognitive dissonance. And meanwhile, Donald Trump was running John Casablanca's Trump model agency for 20 years and had citations moving girls without a visa. 3 known girls and like 17 other red flags. Promising women X amount and then stuffing them into apartment buildings in New York. So he had dozens of women of unknown, dozens of minors in apartment buildings in New York without visas. So they can't be tracked. They could be raped and fucking trafficked. Like, it's fucked up, dude. If you really think about it for a minute, what's that mean that they're here without visas? And Donald Trump told them, lie to customs agents. And they said for years that he said, I just walk backstage, nobody can do anything about it. They said he would just walk backstage and nobody did anything about it. But somehow they say, but Joe Biden was sniffing hair. Yeah, because smelling perfume and raping kids are the same thing, okay? Is that your argument? What difference does it make anyway? It's like, hey, Hitler was a bad guy, so was Charlie Manson. Okay, well, neither one of them should be president. But Biden accused of sniffing hair, Trump accused of rape. It's not the same. Hunter Biden's $45,000 a year administrative job as a consultant ambassador in Ukraine is a more legit job than anything Jared Kushner's doing, building fucking golf courses in Hungary, building golf courses in Saudi Arabia, building golf courses in Ireland, planning Trump Tower in Gaza, profiting $1.3 billion. All that, but Hunter Biden, that's all they did. Look over there, look over there. Well, we're talking about Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. Just saying, hey, Prince Andrew did it too. Hey, Kathy Rumler's in there too. Okay. Well, let's wait to see these videos come out. Undeleted, because there's backups and there's backups of backups.
Today showed everyone today just how little power and influence he really has. I mean, after weeks of trying to stop the release of the Epstein files, Mike Johnson began the day by reversing course and announcing that he would vote yes on the bill to force Trump's DOJ to release all those files. And while Johnson voted with all Democrats and all but one Republican in favor of the bill, he did so while urging the Senate to amend it.
And so I'm very confident that when this moves forward in the process, if and when it is processed in the Senate, which there's no certainty that that will be, that they will take the time methodically to do what we have not been allowed to do in the House, to amend this discharge petition and to make sure that these protections are there. The authors of the discharge did not allow us to do that here. That's the rules here. But in the Senate, they can correct it.
He urged the Senate to amend the bill. He pleaded with the Senate to amend the bill. You just heard him do that. And then the Senate sent it right on through, completely unchanged. A little powerless there. Oh, Mike Johnson. Okay, we're back with Congressman Robert Garcia, the ranking Democrat on the House Oversight Committee. Okay, I just want to ask you for what you're preparing for, because you're always preparing for things. And in this bill, it explicitly allows redactions that completely make sense, right? Child sex abuse materials, victim information. It also allows for redactions that would jeopardize federal investigations. This is sort of what you touched on before with these investigations that they announced last week. And it allows for redactions for classified information. Are you preparing for them to abuse that? That's what it sounds like, for them to pull many things out and say they are in those classifications and they are not really. And how do you check that and know?
What's clear for me is that Donald Trump from day one has not wanted to release these files. That was true yesterday and it's true today, regardless of his public position. So absolutely, we should be prepared to understand that the DOJ is still going to continue to take their orders directly from the president and his desire to keep much of this information hidden from the public. That we should be very clear-eyed about. What does that mean for us? We have to watch this investigation that the DOJ is launching into apparently political enemies of the president, Democrats that he wants to target, that he feels are in the files, that he wants the DOJ to go after. That investigation, we believe, is going to be used as a way for the DOJ to then keep important information and documents from the American public, the Congress, and our committee. And so we understand that, which is why we are focused not just on the DOJ, but on other organizations like the Epstein estate. The Epstein estate is working with us to get us additional documents, and more are coming that will move our investigation forward. We're also, and we know that there are hundreds of FBI and law enforcement agents that have worked to put these files together. We're interviewing survivors every single day and getting and collecting their story. We're demanding other people come and meet with us at the committee. And there are folks from across the country that are contacting us that have important information that we are listening, sitting down, and hearing their story. This is a promise that we're making to the American public. We are going to get to the truth. It becomes more clear every day. And whether Donald Trump wants it or not, we're going to get all of those files released.
To that point, I mean, you announced subpoenas to financial institutions today connected to Epstein, and it is, the money is always a key part here. Who was being paid, and this could be a whole web of people. Who knows? What are you looking to find in that through those subpoenas? And when do you expect to hear back?
So we have been pushing Chairman Comer for months to actually get the subpoena out the door. He had committed to me, both publicly and privately, that they would get a subpoena out to the bank. So when we've been waiting and waiting, and finally tonight, again, thanks to pressure from the committee and the actions happening in Congress, Chairman Comer put out a subpoena on 2 of the banks. So JP Morgan Chase as well as Deutsche Bank. Now, that is an incredible, important first step. There are actually over a dozen additional banks that we need information from, so we've asked Comer to also include those banks. But these banks and this financial information is critical in understanding who was paying Jeffrey Epstein, who Jeffrey Epstein was paying, and what powerful men were essentially money laundering through Epstein in this enormous trafficking ring. So these financial documents are critical to the investigation. And our work on these bank records are just beginning. And so we have made great progress. And in the weeks and months ahead, you're going to be hearing a lot about the massive amount of money that was used and given to Epstein for all of these horrific crimes.
Do you have a sense of when you're going to hear back from the Epstein estate? I know we've talked before, and you just said you're going to get another trove of documents from them.
So we're in contact with the Epstein estate pretty regularly. So we don't know when we're going to get the next group of documents from them, but we do know that there's more documents on their way. And so that, as soon as we get the documents, we will ensure that we get those out to the public, because we know that Republicans refuse to release anything until we release them first and force our hand. So that's something that we plan on doing as soon as we get documents. Anything and any document that we get, we want to make public. We want to make public to the American people.
And I think such an encouraging thing for so many people out there to hear. Congressman Robert Garcia, I know you've been working so tirelessly on this. It matters who the ranking member is on committees. I'm just going to remind people of that. Thank you so much for being here and for everything you've done on this to date. Coming up, this vote on the Epstein files today was not the only huge defeat Donald Trump was dealt today. Quite a day. The other one happened in Texas. I'm going to tell you about it after a very quick break.
Look at this. Look at how much junk mail I get. I mean, credit card offer. And honestly, I don't even know which one of these cards is right for me. It is way easier to use Experian. They show me credit cards matched to my FICO score right in the app. They've got cards like balance transfer, travel miles, and cash back. I love how simple it is for me to pick the card that I want. And let's be so for real, who reads their mail anyway? So get the app from your big financial friend. Experian.
Before you go to extremes to fix sagging and wrinkles with expensive injections, try this first, Olay Regenerist. In a survey of women, 71% said their skin was visibly firmer in 2 weeks without painful prices. For me, it's only Olay.
This is the farmer's dog chicken. Some also call this chicken, but only one is human grade, made to the safety and quality standards of human food. Get 50% off your first box only at thefarmersdog.com.
Nothing is more important than family. A family you're born into, a family you choose, or a family you make. I'm Padma Lakshmi. I came to this country when I was 4 years old with my mother. We came here because it was a land of opportunity. But for many, that's not the case.
Porque primero me separaron de mi mamá y de ahí de mi hermano.
Immigrant families are being separated. Black and brown families are torn apart by a broken legal system. LGBTQ people suffer discrimination in adoption and healthcare. The need to protect and defend the civil liberties we all hold dear is more urgent than ever because families belong together. You can help by joining the American Civil Liberties Union today.
Call or go online now and become an ACLU Guardian of Liberty. All it takes is just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day.
The ACLU has fought to allow LGBTQ couples to marry, for racial justice, to stop family separation. We can't do this work without you. Together, we can defend our democracy, ensure liberty and justice.
Over redistricting to tell you about, because a federal court today said no to the new gerrymandered Republican map in Texas. And it's a major blow to Trump's efforts to stack the deck for the GOP in the 2026 midterms. A 3-judge panel found the maps discriminated on racial lines against Black and Latino voters. And it was a Trump-appointed judge who wrote the ruling that strikes down the map. Trump appointee Judge Jeffrey Brown wrote, quote, "The public perception of this case is that it's about politics. To be sure, politics played a role in drawing the 2025 map, but it was much more than just politics. Substantial evidence shows that Texas racially gerrymandered the 2025 map." That's pretty clear. An appeal heads directly to the Supreme Court and will have to move quickly as the candidate filing deadline for Texas's 2026 elections is coming up next month on December 8th, which is less than 3 weeks away. But this fight, which Trump and Republicans started for sure, does not appear to be working out exactly how they planned. Last week, a court in Utah required the state to adopt a map that adds 1 safe Democratic seat. And in Indiana today, Republicans voted to adjourn the state house through the end of the year, passing on the opportunity, despite pressure from the White House, to hold a special session to consider redistricting. That is a lot, not what they predicted. That does it for me tonight on quite a day. The last word with Lawrence O'Donnell, who has a huge guest, many probably huge guests, starts right now. Hey, Lawrence.
Thanks, Jen. And I'm apologizing in advance. I have a bit of a cold tonight, but not too much to not be able to do this work tonight, which is one of the more important nights of the year so far.
We're grateful for that. I think people don't mind that you have a cold, as long as you're up there and feel okay through it.
I can really hear it, and I don't know. I'm sure the audience can now hear it now that I've brought it to their attention. So, but here we go, cold or not.
Cold or not. I hear you have a big guest tonight. You were one of the people I thought of today as I'm ready to hear and nerd out with all the things you have to say about what a day this has been on the Hill.
Great. Thanks, Jen. Thank you.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Well, Donald Trump confessed today. In one of his emails, Jeffrey Epstein said Donald Trump knew about the girls. And today, Donald Trump told us that he knew Jeffrey Epstein was, quote, a sick pervert, end quote. Sitting beside Saudi Arabia's dictator, desperately trying to divert attention away from the Epstein files vote today, Donald Trump said for the first time that he knew about Jeffrey Epstein before Jeffrey Epstein was ever charged with a crime.
As far as the Epstein files I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert. But I guess I turned out to be right.
Jeffrey Epstein says that he was Donald Trump's closest friend for 10 years, but that friendship ended before Jeffrey Epstein was ever charged with a crime. Donald Trump claims that Jeffrey Epstein was banned from Donald Trump's Florida club before Jeffrey Epstein was ever charged with a crime. And so Donald Trump's huge change in his testimony today about Jeffrey Epstein is that he's now saying he knew about Epstein after saying he knew nothing about Epstein. Donald Trump's confession is just one of the things that made today the worst day of the Trump presidency. It's over. The Trump presidency, as we have known it, is over. Donald Trump's reign of terror in Congress is over. It is fitting today that Donald Trump was sitting beside a murderous dictator in the Oval Office when his dictatorship ended in the House of Representatives and then in the United States Senate. No president has had more dictatorial power over his political party in the House of Representatives and in the Senate than Donald Trump has had. And now that is over. Because an obscure Republican member of the House, Thomas Massie of Kentucky, decided to stand up to Donald Trump this year, and he is still standing tonight after Donald Trump has spent the year trying to destroy him. And now what every Republican has seen is that Thomas Massie has not just stood up to Donald Trump, he has beaten him. Thomas Massie was just another powerless member of the House of Representatives when the year began, and now he has done what other Republicans tried to do in 2016 when Donald Trump ran for president and failed. Thomas Massie has beaten Donald Trump. Thomas Massie has humiliated Donald Trump. In 2016, when Republicans were running against Donald Trump for the presidential nomination, they showed not only that they wanted to beat him, but that they hated him.
Donald Trump is a con artist. The party of Lincoln and Reagan and the presidency of the United States will never be held by a con artist.
You know how you make America great again? Tell Donald Trump to go to hell.
This man is a pathological liar. He doesn't know the difference between truth and lies. The man is utterly amoral. Let me finish this, please. The man is utterly amoral. Morality does not exist for him.
Each one of those cowardly Republicans eventually sold their souls to Donald Trump, and now they publicly worship him. And tonight they can look at Thomas Massie and see the man who they wish they could be, the Republican who beat Donald Trump and humiliated Donald Trump. Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene, an enthusiastic Trump supporter, broke ranks and joined Thomas Massie's crusade to release the Epstein files. And Donald Trump tried to destroy her and is still trying to destroy her, as he is still trying to destroy Thomas Massie. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is still standing today. And today, Marjorie Taylor Greene beat Donald Trump. And every Republican in the House and the Senate watched Marjorie Taylor Greene beat Donald Trump and humiliate him today, crush him. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is still standing. The man sitting beside Donald Trump in the Oval Office today, part of the dictator family that has been running Saudi Arabia since 1932, has been known to have people killed for less than what Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene did to Donald Trump today. Dictators need fear. Dictators cannot operate without fear. And Republicans in the House and the Senate have now learned that Donald Trump is not as scary as they all thought he was. And that is the beginning of the end of dictatorial power for Donald Trump in Republican government. The Republican governor of Texas today learned that Donald Trump's idea to gerrymander districts in Texas turned out to be a disaster when a federal appeals court ruled against the Republican racially based gerrymander of congressional districts in Texas. And so Donald Trump's crazy plan to win the House of Representatives next year by simply creating more Republican districts isn't working. And the Texas governor tonight knows that he made a huge mistake by following dictator Trump's orders. And in a country where Republican members of Congress will have to face the voters next year, a dictator with a 38% approval rating cannot be allowed to have dictatorial power over his party. And so it's over. The Trump presidency, as we have known it, is over. Yes, the cruelty will continue. Yes, Donald Trump will continue to refuse to send the food relief that we have been sending for generations to populations in famine around the world. He will let those people starve. Yes, Donald Trump's immigration enforcement reign of madness will continue, but Donald Trump's dictatorial power over Congress will not continue. Today, Donald Trump is the biggest loser in presidential history on legislation passed by both the House and the Senate that is a direct rebuke of the president. No president has ever suffered a personal rebuke on legislation anywhere close to the enormity of what Donald Trump suffered today. A virtually unanimous vote in the House of Representatives, with one obscure member of the House from Louisiana voting against the release of the Epstein files, with 427 votes, including Speaker Mike Johnson's vote to release the Epstein files. The vote Donald Trump never wanted to happen. Mike Johnson became the most humiliated speaker in history today at the end of a House vote. No speaker in history has ever spent a year in opposition to legislation and then, at the last minute, joined a basically unanimous vote in favor of that legislation that he opposed every day until that day. Mike Johnson spent the year doing Donald Trump's dirty work in the House of Representatives by blocking any chance for a vote on releasing the Epstein files. And then, when the vote was forced upon him, Mike Johnson completely surrendered. And then Mike Johnson was doubly humiliated in his surrender today after he said this.
I called my counterpart in the Senate, Leader Thune, and I talked him through this with him and shared our deep concerns. And of course, they share those concerns as well. And so I'm very confident that when this moves forward in the process, if and when it is processed in the Senate, which there's no certainty that that will be, that they will take the time methodically to do what we have not been allowed to do in the House, to amend this discharge petition.
That was Mike Johnson's excuse for reversing himself today and voting for the release of the Epstein files. He was guaranteed by Republican Senate Majority Leader John Thune that the Senate would amend the bill passed by the House and include the kind of changes Mike Johnson insisted were necessary. He actually said, I called my counterpart in the Senate, Leader Thune, and I talked through this with him and shared our deep concerns. When I heard that, I thought, well, for sure, the Senate is going to have to add amendments or try to add amendments. And now I know someone is lying. Either Mike Johnson is lying about that phone call, or John Thune lied to Mike Johnson on that phone call, because John Thune had no intention of offering amendments to the House bill. And now we have all the evidence we could possibly ask for that John Thune was the person who convinced Donald Trump that it was all over. Viewers of this program last night heard me lay out the scenarios similar to what happened when Republican President Richard Nixon was told by Republican Senate leader Hugh Scott that Richard Nixon would lose an impeachment verdict vote in the United States Senate if it came to that. And that is when Richard Nixon decided to resign the presidency the next day. John Thune must have communicated to Donald Trump over the weekend, directly or indirectly, that the vote against him on the Epstein files in the United States Senate was going to include most, if not all, Republicans. And that is when Donald Trump put out his tweet saying that Republicans in the House should vote to release the Epstein files. He only would have done that if Donald Trump knew there was absolutely no hope that the United States Senate could stop this vote. And today, the Senate vote was unanimous. It included every Republican. The United States Senate voted unanimously to pass the identical bill passed in the House of Representatives earlier today. And so John Thune gave Mike Johnson his final crushing humiliation of the day, a humiliation that every member of Congress will remember. No Republican in the House of Representatives can ever trust their Republican speaker when he says the Senate will amend the bill the way we want it amended. You get to lie about that once as a congressional leader, and you will never be believed again. Mike Johnson is the smallest Speaker of the House we have ever seen, and I don't mean physical stature. I mean he is the smallest influence on the House of any Speaker we have ever seen. He is not, never has been up to the job. The job is too big for him. And any Republican who didn't know that yesterday knows it today. The first time I heard the word unanimous in describing the House and Senate votes on the Epstein files was when I heard myself say it right here last night on this program when I asked Congressman Robert Garcia if the vote in the House of Representatives might be unanimous. And he said, yes, that was possible. And that's how far we had come from late last week, when by the end of the week, the most anyone was suggesting was that the possibility of maybe 100 Republican votes instead of the 216 Republican votes in the House today to release the Epstein files. And then I heard myself use the word unanimous last night when I asked Senator Amy Klobuchar if the vote in the Senate might turn out to be unanimous, and she said yes, it might be. We have never seen a reversal like this in the history of the presidency or in the history of the Congress, and especially the Senate, because Republican senators, except for 2, are on record as having been forced to vote against the release of the Epstein files this year. Chuck Schumer forced a vote in September in the Senate on releasing the Epstein files, and the vote was 51 to 49 against releasing the Epstein files, with every Democrat voting to release the Epstein files and all but 2 Republicans voting against the release of the Epstein files. Susan Collins voted against the release of the Epstein files. Rand Paul and Joshua Hawley were the only Republican senators who voted to release the Epstein files. And so they were the only Republican senators who didn't reverse their votes today in the United States Senate. And so Susan Collins and other Republicans running for re-election next year will be claiming that they voted to release the Epstein files, and their opponents will be able to say accurately, well, first you voted against the release of the Epstein files. The dictator got Susan Collins all tangled up in his mess this year, and she voted against releasing the Epstein files before she voted in favor of releasing the Epstein files today. The Republican dictator of the Republican Senate got 51 Republicans to foolishly vote against the release of the Epstein files before they all voted for the release of the Epstein files today. And it is very important that you see how that vote occurred today in a standard-sounding unanimous consent request submitted by the Senate Minority Leader. A unanimous consent request submitted by the Senate Minority Leader are almost always immediately rejected by the majority, but not today. The only way you can really see what happens in the Senate chamber is by being in the Senate chamber. The video cameras are always leaving something out of the frame. The best Senate reporters spend real time in the press gallery above the Senate floor, looking down with a view of everything that happens in the room, the best view of everything that happens in the room. Stephen Groves of the Associated Press set the stage this way, quote, just before Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer called to pass the bill by unanimous consent, Oklahoma Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, a Republican who is close to Trump, walked in the chamber and gave Schumer a thumbs up. He then walked over to Schumer and shook his hand. Here is that handshake on video. Take a look at that picture of the Senate floor after the only Republican in the chamber, Mark Wayne Mullen, has left. That desk in the front row across the aisle from Chuck Schumer is John Thune's desk on the Senate floor. That is where John Thune or one of his lieutenants is supposed to always be to object to any unanimous consent request by Chuck Schumer. John Thune knew exactly what Chuck Schumer was going to do and when he was going to do it. He knew it for 2 hours, more than 2 hours before Chuck Schumer did it. Chuck Schumer had publicly announced exactly what he was going to do. And surely, as we can tell by Mark Wayne Mullen's handshake, Chuck Schumer had told John Thune what he was going to do. He said it publicly at 3 o'clock. John Thune told every Republican member of the Senate that the unanimous consent request was coming. They call them the hotlines. It is the way the Senate leadership in each party communicates with every member of the Senate about what is happening next on the Senate floor. They use the same landline telephones that have been in the Senate offices since the invention of the telephone, and those phones alert every Senate office that there is a unanimous consent request, and every senator can give his or her consent. through those telephone hotlines without ever leaving their office. And if just one senator does not consent, then that's the end of it. And those hotlines are usually activated hours before the unanimous consent request is filed on the floor. And so what Mark Wayne Mullen was sent to do in a Senate chamber where John Thune didn't even want to be seen was to tell Chuck Schumer that the unanimous consent request has been cleared by the Republican hotline. And Mark Wayne Mullen, who can be so combatively defensive of Donald Trump in Senate hearings that he looks like he might throw a punch sometimes, found himself in the final moment of the Trump humiliation in the United States Senate today, shaking hands with the United States Senator who Donald Trump hates the most. And then, at 5:20 p.m., Chuck Schumer said this.
The American people have waited long enough. Jeffrey Epstein's victims have waited long enough. Let the truth come out. Let transparency reign. And I urge my Republican colleagues, let the Senate act today. And so, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate receives H.R. 4405, the Epstein Files Transparency Act from the House, the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration. The bill be considered, read 3 times, and passed with no intervening action or debate, and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there an objection? Without objection, so ordered.
The Senate has now passed the Epstein bill as soon as it comes over from the House. I yield the floor.
After Chuck Schumer succeeded in unanimously passing the House bill in the Senate, the humiliated and overwhelmed Speaker of the House used a lot.
What did Jeffrey Epstein mean in his emails when he said you knew about the girls?
I know nothing about that. They would have announced that a long time ago. It's really, what did he mean when he spent all the time with Bill Clinton, with the president of Harvard, you know, that is Summers, Larry Summers, whatever his name is, and all of the other people that he spent time with. Jeffrey Epstein and I had a very bad relationship for many years, but he also saw strike because I was president. So he dictated a couple of memos to himself, give me a break. You're going to find out what did he know with respect to Bill Clinton, with respect to the head of Harvard, with respect to all of those people that he knew, including J.P. Morgan chairs.
Sir,
Yeah,
if
Jennifer,
there's
go
nothing
ahead.
incriminating in the files, sir, why not acting as a...
Quiet.
On Venezuela, sir, you've had a lot of meetings on Venezuela. I know you can't tell us what you're incriminating in the files, on Venezuela, sir. Why not acting as a... On Venezuela, sir, you've had a lot of meetings on Venezuela. I know you can't tell us what your next steps will be in the files, on Venezuela, sir. Why not acting as a... On Venezuela, sir, you've had a lot of meetings on Venezuela. I know you can't tell us what your next steps will be, but can you say, have you made up... Why not acting as a... On Venezuela, sir, you've had a lot of meetings on Venezuela. I know you can't... If there's nothing incriminating in the files, on Venezuela, sir, why not acting as a...
Mr. President, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
You know, it's not the question that I mind, it's your attitude. I think you are a terrible reporter. It's the way you ask these questions. You start off with a man who's highly respected, asking him a horrible, insubordinate, and just a terrible question. And you could even ask that same exact question nicely. You're all psyched up. Somebody psychs you over at ABC. They're going to psych it. You're a terrible person and a terrible reporter. As far as the Epstein files is, I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert.
Mr. President, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
You know, it's not the question that I mind, it's your attitude. I think you are a terrible reporter. It's the way you ask these questions. You start off with a man who's highly respected, asking him a horrible, insubordinate, and just a terrible question. And You could even ask that same exact question nicely. You're all psyched up. Somebody psychs you over at ABC. They're going to psych it. You're a terrible person and a terrible reporter. As far as the Epstein files is, I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert. But I guess I turned out to be right. But you know who does have? Bill Clinton. Larry Summers, who ran Harvard, was with him every single night, every single weekend. They lived together. They went to his island many times. I never did. Andrew Weissman, I hear. All these guys were friends of his. You don't even talk about those people. You just keep going on the Epstein files. And what the Epstein is a Democrat hoax to try and get me not to be able to talk about the $21 trillion that I talked about today. It's a hoax. Now, I just got a little report, and I put it in my pocket, of all the money that he's given to Democrats. He gave me none, zero, no money to me. But he gave money to Democrats. And people are wise to your hoax. And ABC's, your company, your crappy company, is one of the perpetrators. And I'll tell you something. I think the license should be taken away from ABC because your news is so fake and it's so wrong. And we have a great commissioner, the chairman, who should look at that, because I think when you come in and when you're 97% negative to Trump, and then Trump wins the election in a landslide, that means obviously your news is not credible, and you're not credible as a reporter. So I've answered your question. You should go and look at the Democrats who received money from Epstein, who spent their time. Larry Summers was with him all the time. That creep, the fund guy, was with him all the time. What's his name? Who? Reid Hoffman. I don't know Reid Hoffman, but I know he spends a lot of money on the radical left. Reid Hoffman, in my opinion, should be under investigation. He's a sleazebag. And those are the people, but they don't get any press, they don't get any news.
Want a front row seat to see exactly what areas of the stock market my team is moving money into this week? Charles Payne here.
Mr. President, what did Jeffrey Epstein mean? Incriminating in the files? Sir, if there's nothing incriminating in the files, sir, why are you acting as if... On Venezuela, sir, you've had a lot of meetings on... Why are you acting as if... On Venezuela, sir, you've had a lot of meetings on Venezuela. I know you... On Venezuela, sir, you've had a lot of meetings on Venezuela. Why are you acting as if... On Venezuela, sir, you've had a... Why are you acting as if... On Venezuela, in the files, Venezuela, sir. Why are you acting as if... On Venezuela, sir, you've had a lot of meetings on Venezuela. I know you can't tell us what your next steps will be, but...
Business. Any board, any corporate board in the country would tell you that would be a governance nightmare. It would be a scandal of the highest order. And for some reason, because it's the chief executive of the country, it's not, we're just like, we're sweeping it under the rug. But again,
she owns a company. I run it.
I now know why Mommy was so stressed.
Embezzlement, insurance fraud, wire fraud. Hey, Bob. What's